to this first in a series of tech talks looking at the road to net zero. My name's Paul Harmer. I'm the lead technical consultant at the Chartered Institute of Plumbing and Heating Engineering. The CIPHE is a registered charity. We're a professional body and we are there to protect the safety, health and welfare of the public through professional plumbing and heating engineering installations. The key focus of today is the low carbon ready system. What is a low carbon ready system? Why do we need it? How are we going to deliver such a system? And let's start to look at the roadmap between now and 2025, where we're looking at the Future Home Standard. So just a little bit about myself. I've been in the industry now 26 years. Started out as an apprentice plumbing and heating installer and worked my way through different areas of this amazing industry, from installing plumbing and heating systems, from renewable energy systems through to design, manufacturing, product development, innovation, and then I'm here now trying to support the industry for the CIPHE as we move towards net zero and really to try and get everyone working together. So I'll hand over to Jerry Whiteley, who's the technical manager, and he'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for that introduction. My name's Jerry, Technical Manager at Chartered Institute of Plumbing and Engineering. I've started out at 16 when I left school into the industry and spent many, many years being through the ranks and self-employed, like many people that do there. And spent around about 20 odd years in the industry, then went into teaching and learning in further education to a variety of colleges over the years, and I'm sure a lot of you out there will know me from that. And then I'm here today with the Chartered Institute of Plumbing and Engineering, working with yourself on the low carbon agenda.
Thanks for that intro, Jerry. So let's just go straight to the point of why we're here today. What is a low carbon ready system? Okay, that's what we're talking about. We mentioned the word system here. So let's take a look at this diagram. As you can see on there, some people might remember the days of the HD Ready telly. That badge was quite familiar, I know. LC Ready and low carbon ready system. What is a low carbon ready system? It's a good question. It can be complicated, but we're going to try and simplify it here. We need to walk before we can run. So, number one in all of this is the consumer. The consumer is number one. They need affordable comfort, they need choice, and they need to know what they're having. So let's give this system an identity. Low carbon ready system. What is it? So, we've got a heat generator. We know we have low carbon ready heat generators. We've got heat pumps. They're there today. They're ready to go out the box. We know we're developing hydrogen ready boilers. We can't just focus on one technology alone. So we've got it working in parallel. So the grid. So when we look at the grid, and people see grid and they think electrical grid, it's the gas grid as well. You know, we're decarbonising both. A lot of work, great work's going on to inject hydrogen into the grid for the future. The gas grid, this is decarbonise as we move towards net zero. Just as much as we're decarbonising the electricity grid through wind turbines, solar PV, etc. The same goes for hydrogen in the future. We will work towards electrolysis, using electrolysis through renewable sources to create that hydrogen. So let's go to the system now. What is a low carbon system? So we'll simplify it. The commonality between any heat generator is the heat emitter. Let's say radiator or underfloor heating. What we want for a low carbon ready system is a maximum flow temperature of 55, because as we drop below that, the system becomes more efficient. The gas boiler will then condense longer. That's one option, one solution or one output. And the second one is a heat pump will be more efficient, running at a higher COP. Controls, very important. Some great work in the industry over the coming years about the introduction of weather compensation. One key thing here is, we can't forget, is we look at that house there, is the heat loss. We need to understand, as a date stamp, what is the peak heat load of that property. That's where the heat loss comes in. Once we know that, what's our starting point? We then look at what heat generator we're going to use. A heat generator retrofit, there's a combination boiler there. So we've got no hot water cylinder. So how can we make that combination boiler, or that system, low carbon ready? Well, it's the heat emitters. Let's assess the existing heat emitters, and there may be 2 or 3 that might need upgrading, but there could be quite a few oversized heat emitters that will actually operate at 55 degrees. But let's not forget that reports, and some research report about hybrid heat pumps, which talks about run for bays, which talks about the way consumers control their heating, very much on and off. That's quite common. On and off in the morning, get up, turn it on and off. You could probably find that you speak to a customer when you go to survey the property and say, look, in the depths of winter it's really cold. How quickly does your, it's set back maybe 3 or 4 degrees in the night. How quickly does your room reach temperature? Oh, it's half an hour. Straight away you know there that has got oversized an element in the heat emitter for response capacity. So if you just have a look at this quick table on there, I've taken this out of the latest, most up-to-date standard of BS 12831. It looks at response times. So as you can see there, of a 3 degree night setback, if you want that heating on in half an hour, just take a look at the increase, and that's per square metre, watts per square metre, that will increase to the system. So we introduce weather comp, we have the system operating more efficiently. Potentially that radiator is okay. There may be some that need upgrading. Okay, that's fine. So at the end of it, we make sure that we've got the efficient controls. We've got heat emitters that are running at a lower flow temperature, below 55, and then we have our heat generator. So step one, we can't necessarily get to delve into the pipe. Yes, we know pipe work's important, and system balancing has to be done. So once you've changed your radiators, you rebalance the system, make sure it's working, get that delta T correctly, get that return temperature if it's a boiler correctly. It might be an existing heat pump. Let's get that delta T of 5 right. Yeah, okay, let's get it running correctly. The hot water we can't touch at the moment. Let's say you've got a combination boiler, and I mean that's referring to a combi boiler. You can't suddenly start putting pipework in for a cylinder to future-proof it for a cylinder, because we don't know what's coming in the future. We also, if we did try and upgrade it to a heat pump, and the consumer in the future decides, then where is that heat pump going to be sited? So we need to be careful. So we're trying to simplify it as step one, and I think it's a good step forward for industry. But I'd like to then now delve a little bit more into education. So the Institute's done some great work with industry and government to bring forward this off-qual qualification for low temperature heating and hot water systems in dwellings. So the group is actively working together with a deadline before the end of the year, and we're looking at how we can mandate this now for all systems. But I'd like to just get a quick comment from Jerry, because Jerry's been involved in the further education sector for quite a while now, and we've seen a lot of change on the apprenticeship schemes, and there's some negativity out there, and we know there's always room for improvement. So how can this low carbon ready system, Jerry, get introduced, or even the core competence that we bring into the further education sector? So what steps do we need to make?
Right, Paul. So those steps that we need to take to embed this into education and training into all the various sectors of that are that we need to review what happens now with regards to what is fairly basic assessments that take place in most of the programmes. So we need to look to standardise this programme for low carbon and get that into things like the new T levels and into the apprenticeships delivery.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jerry. It's really interesting. I think I'll add to that. We need to educate at the school level as well. We need something in there. We need to excite them about this career, a career that's going to help combat climate change. It's really, really important that it's not just about working on the tools. There's plenty of other avenues to go and work in this industry: manufacturing, education, on the tools, which is a really rewarding career. I've been there myself. Very practical, very challenging, but really rewarding. But I was going to bring up on the screen now, Jerry, this sort of thought-provoking infographic now. So as you can see there in green, we've got what we call the low carbon core competencies that the CIPHE alongside industry are developing. Because we've carried out a gap analysis, there are standards that are not up to date. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So we're bringing that up, raising the bar and creating that level. Various different things we're looking at, from climate databases to the correct way to size a hot water cylinder, for example. So I can see where you're coming from, Jerry. Let's get in there at the T level, and let's get in there at the apprenticeships and bring those competencies in. But as you can see there in the middle, we've got the experienced worker routes, we've got the existing installers that have been installing gas heating systems for years. We just need to upskill them slightly. But not only that, give them the tools, digital tools, to help them, help them embed the knowledge better, but also give them something to work with when they leave the training room. So I'm interested, Jerry, on your opinion on this blended learning approach, because the world has changed, as you know. So what's your thought on this training course we're developing as a group, as a blended learning approach? Because we don't want installers having too much time off work. Got to make it interesting. So what's your thought on that, Jerry?
So my thoughts on that, Paul, are that in reality, for our youth of today, the younger people out there, they've been digital savvy for many, many years and tied knots into us, really, with their mobile phones and everything else on the go. So they're well ahead of the game with regards to the digital side of things. And that is the future of things, regardless of all this engagement through the COVID activities that's made us push into the digital aspects of things. But we should build upon that now, without a doubt. And not only that, it's accessing it 24/7 for the learner. It's not necessarily have to be accessed within a classroom environment. So learning can take place when they want and in their own place of work, if that was the case, or at home.
Thanks for that, Jerry. So we've briefly summarised now what is a low carbon ready system. When I say what is, we're walking before we can run. So it's a summary of what that low carbon ready system is, giving that consumer an identity of what they're buying or what they're having installed. We know about the grid. We've spoke about the heat generators. We've also looked at how we need to get it in. We need to raise the standard of the education sector and how we can embed it across the board, standardise. That's another one. But I'm just going to bring up this brief graphic here, which is from my product development days in innovation, about understanding the customer first before you create a product. So on the left-hand side, you can see the product, and the product's an education product. In this instance, we're talking about a new qualification. And on the right-hand side, we have our customer, which is both the installer and the consumer, because if we're educating installers, it will have an impact on the consumer. So we can see pains and gains. It's talking to the installer. How can we make your life easier? And what pains have you got? What you're not happy with? So start there. Don't start from the left and create a product and force it down the throat of the installer, because we've seen that recently and over many years about education products that have not necessarily worked as we would have liked, and we may have forced it into the installer. New schemes, all these sort of stuff. We need to make sure the installer is happy, number one, as well as the customer. So. And it says pains and gains. We're not talking about pain relievers with a tablet. What we're talking about is giving you the tools to carry out your job correctly. Just trying to upskill you to the next level. So that's the first thing now is why we're doing it. We've carried out many installer workshops where we've sat down with the installer on contractors, large contractors, installers, trade associations. We've engaged with government, and we're pretty certain that there's a need for this qualification and to help raise the bar slightly. And what was really promising was the results we had from the consultation, that we had, 80% and above of the respondents, I think it was 90%, were one-man bands. We can't forget that one-man band. We do not want to overburden them with stuff. So it's key here that we make this accessible. We don't want them sat in a training centre for days on end. We know it needs to be mandated, but let's bring in education with digital tools. So we're looking at a very much graphical user interface, the use of up-to-date design tools to assist you in what you're doing and to assist the trainer as well. But let's finish off today, because there's going to be more of these. We're going to make them very much installer focused. We're bringing installers along board. The next one will have 4 or 5 installers in. Let's talk to the installers. Let's find out what they want. Let's see the challenges they're having. But we're just going to finish off on a very basic technical snippet on sizing a radiator for low temperature heating. So just looking at the standard and just very simply just saying I've got a radiator running on 75 degrees with a Delta Tier 10, and now I'm going to size it for a Delta Tier 5 for a heat pump, but at 55 degrees.
Right, Paul, so I'm now with a consumer and I've walked in there and I'm looking at this central heating system with a 75 degree flow. And I realise now that the radiator is probably going to be too small with regards to working on lower temperatures. So what are the key steps in the learning I need to know to be able to get this design right so the consumer has got a low carbon system?
Yeah, okay, Jerry. Well, just to be clear for you, this isn't design advice now. This is not, I'm not teaching. I'm not going to go through the maths and the formulas and everything like that. It's just a very simple overview, just to understand. As you say, you've realised it's okay. It's a kilowatt. The heat loss is a kilowatt, the rad's rated at a kilowatt at 75, 65. Your radiator's at 70 degrees, mean water, so that's simple, 75 plus 65 divided by 2. And your room's at 20 degrees. The difference between the radiator and the room is 50 degrees. It's rated at a kilowatt. If I suddenly now, as you can see, just lower the flow temperature down to 55, maintaining the same delta T, as you can see, that output is dropping and from a kilowatt down. So if we left it like that, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that they're going to be cold. So, and this is where the just the basic overview is, we're going to need a larger radiator. So now I'm going to increase the size of that radiator. Now, as you can see in animation, as it's increasing slowly in surface area, again, this is only illustrative, you can see the output going back up to 1 kilowatt. So just finishing off, Joe, just touching on that really good point about what are the steps I need to take as a learner. Well, the first thing is carry out some training and look at this qualification that the industry's pulled together to develop, because that will give you the core competencies, but also standardise as well, where all of us will be designing. So it's not all just about, obviously, this qualification. We're trying to make training more engaging. We're looking at innovation through digital tools. So it's not just sort of sit there in a classroom and be lectured at. We're trying to make this distance learning, again, blended, still a bit of engagement. It's not all about distance learning, but something that engages the learner. Okay, so and then really at the end of it, okay, what's the consumer going to get out of this? So there'll be a certificate, a low carbon ready certificate, to validate on that day you've had a full heat loss, room by room, so we know what the peak heat loads are. That's critical, first thing. The heat emitters are a maximum, or installed and designed to a maximum flow temperature 55 or below, and the controls have been brought up to scratch. So you could have weather compensation, so just to make it more efficient, and we try and reduce that demand. Let's not forget insulation, obviously, that, you know, some of the outcomes of this could be simply you've got cavity walls there which are not filled. You might want to fill those cavity walls, or the loft, there's no insulation in the loft. These are the sort of things that maybe as installers, just a little bit of an extra advice there, but it will help, actually would help that consumer-installer relationship. So I'd like to thank Jerry Whiteley today for joining me on this Road to Net Zero series, the first one, and I look forward to the next one where we're inviting 4 or 5 installers to sit there and let's get to the bottom of what's going on the front line. So thank you very much.